Tommy's time-twisting tales, the first moon landing. Tommy sat in his room, the light of a late afternoon sun casting long shadows over his posters of rockets and astronauts. His hands fiddled with the old wristwatch he discovered in his attic just a few days ago. The watch wasn't an ordinary one, it had buttons and dials that seemed far too complex for its simple design. Tommy often found himself staring at it, wondering what it did. But today, something was different. As Tommy turned the knob on the side, the watch began to glow, a soft, blue light that pulsed with energy. His heart raced, and he felt a strange, tingling sensation run up his arm. He stood up, startled, as the light from the watch grew brighter and brighter, filling his room with a radiant glow. Suddenly, he wasn't in his room anymore. Tommy blinked, trying to understand what had just happened. He was no longer in his bedroom, but instead in a large room filled with people. There were dozens of engineers and scientists, all wearing white shirts, black ties, and thick-rimmed glasses. Massive machines hummed and clicked around him, and the giant screen at the front of the room displayed a countdown. This was no ordinary place. Tommy realized he was standing in the middle of NASA's control center. His jaw dropped as he heard the words Apollo 11. Could it be? Was he really about to witness one of the most important moments in history? Tommy felt both thrilled and scared. The glowing watch had brought him here, but why? What was he supposed to do? The room buzzed with excitement. Engineers hurriedly pushed buttons, made calls, and pointed to different screens. Tommy felt like a small speck in a massive, important moment. As he watched, a tall man with graying hair approached him, a calm smile on his face. His spacesuit had the name Commander Brooks embroidered on it, and his presence immediately made Tommy feel at ease. "Hey there, kid," Commander Brooks said, bending down to Tommy's level. "Looks like you've found your way into something pretty big, huh?" Tommy nodded, too stunned to speak. Before he could say anything, a younger astronaut with short brown hair and an energetic grin jogged over. "Commander, we're almost ready for liftoff," he called, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Tommy could see the name Pilot Harris on his suit. "Who's this?" Pilot Harris asked, giving Tommy a playful smile. "Seems like we've got ourselves a special guest today," Commander Brooks said with a wink. "Think he's up for it?" Tommy wasn't sure what it was, but his curiosity was growing. "Up for what?" he asked, his voice small but eager. The two astronauts exchanged a glance. "How would you like to come with us, to the moon?" Commander Brooks asked, his voice steady but filled with a sense of awe. Tommy's heart skipped a beat. "To the moon?" he whispered, as if saying it too loudly might make it disappear. But the astronauts were serious. They led him to the massive Saturn V rocket, which loomed above them like a skyscraper reaching into the sky. Steam and smoke billowed from its base, and the rumbling of engines made the ground tremble beneath Tommy's feet. "It's the trip of a lifetime," Pilot Harris said, slapping Tommy on the back. "And you, my friend, are going to witness history." Tommy's excitement bubbled up inside him. As the countdown ticked closer to 0, he realized this was no dream. He was really about to blast off to the moon. After what felt like hours of preparation, Tommy found himself inside the rocket, strapped into a seat next to Commander Brooks and Pilot Harris. The vibration of the engines filled the capsule as the countdown echoed in his ears. 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. The force of the rocket launch pressed Tommy back into his seat, his eyes wide with both fear and excitement. Outside the tiny window, he watched as the Earth slowly shrank, turning from a vast landscape into a small, round globe floating in the darkness of space. Hours later, Tommy was floating. His body felt weightless, as if he were swimming in a pool but without the water. The capsule had finally entered the moon's orbit. Tommy could see the cratered surface of the moon below, its dusty gray plains shimmering under the harsh sunlight. He couldn't believe it, he was actually here. Before long, Tommy, Commander Brooks, and Pilot Harris were suited up and ready to step onto the moon. Tommy's spacesuit was a little too big, but that didn't matter. His heart pounded in his chest as they descended the lunar module ladder. The moment his boots touched the lunar soil, he felt an electric thrill shoot through him. The moon was even more incredible up close. The landscape stretched out before him, a sea of gray dust with enormous craters and jagged mountains in the distance. And the silence, it was so quiet, almost eerie. Tommy took a small hop, and to his surprise, he floated upward, landing gently a few feet away. "It's the low gravity," Pilot Harris explained, grinning. "You can jump really high here." Tommy couldn't stop himself. He laughed as he hopped and bounced across the lunar surface, feeling like a superhero with each leap. Commander Brooks set up some equipment to measure the moon's surface, while Pilot Harris planted a flag to mark their landing site. But Tommy was lost in his own wonder. He looked up at the sky and saw Earth, a beautiful blue and green marble floating in the distance. In that moment, Tommy realized just how small he was compared to the vastness of space. But at the same time, he felt incredibly lucky to be standing here, experiencing something so few people ever would. The moon had its mysteries, but more than anything, it was a place of incredible beauty and wonder. The return to Earth felt much faster than the journey to the moon. As Tommy sat in the capsule, floating weightlessly, he reflected on everything he had experienced. He had walked on the moon, seen Earth from space, and learned what it felt like to be a part of something bigger than himself. He wasn't just a kid anymore, he was a time traveler, an explorer of worlds. Commander Brooks sat at the controls, focused on bringing them home safely, while Pilot Harris chatted about the first meal he would have once they landed. Tommy chuckled at their banter, but his mind was still on the moon, imagining all the other adventures waiting for him in the future. As they re-entered Earth's atmosphere, the capsule shook and rattled, but Tommy wasn't scared. He knew he was in safe hands. The ocean grew larger beneath them, and with a loud splash, they landed safely in the water, where a recovery team was already waiting. Back on solid ground, Commander Brooks turned to Tommy and smiled. "Well, kid, you've just been to the moon. How does it feel?" Tommy grinned. "It feels out of this world." Commander Brooks laughed and ruffled Tommy's hair. "Remember, there's a big universe out there. Always keep looking up." As Tommy watched the capsule get loaded onto the recovery ship, he glanced down at the watch still on his wrist. It glowed faintly, as if reminding him that more adventures were waiting. Tommy smiled. He knew he would never stop exploring. Back to his own time, he carried with him the lessons of the past and the stars. And now, as you drift off to sleep, dream big, because every adventure, just like Tommy's, starts with a dream. Good night.